So I was wrong, and I can admit to being wrong, right? So we're talking about the final four for both the men's and both the women's basketball. So, my bracket was busted, so I'll tell you who I had winning on both sides of the bracket, right? So for the women, obviously, I went with South Carolina to repeat and win, but they were boathouse, man. Yukon, Paige, Beckers, those girls were just too much for them. Too much, too often, and they were the team to beat. UConn went through UCLA, the number one overall seed, and I'll tell you, I know back in the day for me, when I looked at WNBA, I saw Lisa Leslie and Don Staley and a couple of these other players that were playing, and basketball back then was kind of slow when I talk about women's basketball, but now women's basketball is exciting. I mean, women's basketball is fast. I mean, these girls can shoot, they can dribble, they could move to the basket, they could get to the cup, they could pretty much do everything, man. I mean, the only thing they can't do is consistently is dunk high flying like that. But the game has evolved so much. But I had South Carolina repeating, and I was wrong. All right. Paige Beckers and the team was just too much for Don Staley. And then when you look at Full Wiley, right? Full Wiley is the sixth man coming off the bench. And, you know, when you going into the second half with only 3 points, it's tough. And then another thing that I think South Carolina, had an issue with, and that is pure shooting. I think as Dawn Staley builds out her roster, right, as she's looking for the future, and I know she already has, talent probably lined up from 2020, 2028 class already. But, I know she has her people lined up, and there are girls on the bench that didn't get the opportunity because from what I'm hearing, their whole team is full of All Americans, right? So what that's telling me right there is that she's prepared down the line. But what I did not see from this team is a pure shooter. Now, I know last year with having Cardoza on the team, she was a big, you were able to dump that down into Cardoza and then go. And Raven Johnson stepped up, shooting the threes, and it was an emotional year. It was a payback year, and that's why I think they came with that fight. But this year, I think Paige Beckers and her team was just too much. It was too much offense. They just couldn't stop it. I mean, these girls were shooting 3 pointers from everywhere. They were getting to the basket. They were passing the ball, open lanes. Gino Ariema had these girls ready, man. This was pretty much the same team as last year with UConn, but I don't think they were quite ready. They were still kind of a little uptight, and they weren't really as polished as they could have been. But I think this was their year. You could tell in just their overall ambiance that they were just ready. They were ready to go. They were ready to just take on whoever came in their way. So I tip my cap to and the Yukon women Huskies, and they did their thing. They did their thing, winning the national championship. So Dawn Staley's going to be back. She's going to be back, I'm sure. But what I would recommend from watching that game, we need some more pure shooters. You need some pure shooters. You need offense that you could generate. For Wiley could get in the lane and she could open up the lane and she could create for her team. But I think what needs to happen is they definitely need to have some shooters that can open things up. And once that ball is distributed, that pass around the lane, you have your slasher. Tessa Johnson could go in there and she can slash and she can shoot. And then you got down low. I know they had an injury. One of the girls that was injured this year and she was out. So that's going to be, a big bounce back for next year. But again, she's a big, right? So she's a utility player. I think you need some more shooters. You need some sharp shooters on that team, and I think that's what's going to make the difference for Don Staley and her team. Now, let's flip over to the men's side, and I watched the game, Duke against Houston. And let me tell you, no lie, I was taking Houston. I took them for light. I really didn't. I knew Houston had a great team, but I didn't expect what I saw. I thought Duke, my bracket, I had Duke winning. I did two brackets. So I had Duke winning one bracket, and then I had Florida winning the next bracket, right? I didn't expect Houston. And if I could go back and change things now, looking at what I'm looking at, I'm going with Houston because of, the tenacity of these guys. I mean, they do not give up, and it's an embodiment of their coach. It's just an embodiment of him. He's a hard nosed coach that coaches hard, that does everything hard, goes 100%. And when he goes 100%, the team is just going to follow right behind him, right? So that is what I saw from Houston, and actually, in actuality, when I saw Duke was up, and they were up by at this time, I think it was like 12 points or something like this, and it was like 8 minutes left or something like this. I turned it off. I turned it off. But then I turned it back on, and then they were down by, I think, 5 or 6 points, and then I just watched the rest of the game from there. You know, from that stretch. And when I talk about defensive pressure, when I talk about you just putting the ball in the hoop and you hustling, and I'll tell you one thing also about Houston, they got some shooters and they got some slashers and they got some guys that go to the basket and they got guys that hustle. One thing that I see when you play, you could tell that these guys practice at a level that is an all-time high level because they are seriously going after every single ball. They are fighting. They are going for it. They are hustling. And so, for in my prediction for tonight, I am definitely gonna flip, and I'm going with Houston because from what I see they did with Duke, I expected Duke to win the whole thing, and they got shocked. And Cooper Flag, man, he's a baller. He's a baller. I don't know how that's going to translate to the NBA, and so what I'm going to kind of evaluate is how Cooper Flag is going to translate to the NBA, because I think he's going to be one of those players that like a Mike Miller kind of player. Obviously he's a utility. He could get to the bucket. He could do pretty much everything. Then again, and he has the athleticism, and he's 6'9". So, I want to see how his athleticism is going to translate to the NBA. I think he's going to do well. But, he may start off kind of slow, obviously, and then, he's going to build his way up. But I don't think he's going to be a bust. I don't know if he's going to be a superstar like how he is in college and through high school. But I mean, he proved his worth for Duke this year. So he grew up a lot. He made some mistakes early in the season, but then bounced back and led his team to Final Four. So look forward to him, in the draft, and a couple other kids in the draft. But tonight with Florida, and I like Florida's point guard, man. And Clayton Jr. is a sharpshooter. I like those kids. This is going to be a really good game. I think if Houston is able to spread the ball around, they're able to, get open, using the pick and roll, get open, use slashing to, get some open lanes, get some quick buckets while, you're weaving. And, if they play solid man to man defense and they also have like a 3/4 press and a full court press that is stifling. And when they turn that on, I want to see how Florida can handle that. But I'm gonna have to go with Houston, man. I'm gonna have to go with Houston. So we're gonna see if this ages well. But Houston is my pick for to the game tonight. So I want to make sure I get this video uploaded so that at least you would know that I had my prediction in before Houston won. So we'll see if that's true or not. All right. See you on the next one.